Audio check. Audio check. 1, 2. Check 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay. Turn it off for now.
Yeah, that's on now, right? Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna turn it off.
Audio test, mic check, audio test. Ready? Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here this evening, both in the room and on live online. Welcome to the 2020 Austin Montessori School Annual Town Hall Meeting. This is an annual occasion where we get to pan out and look at our organization through a different lens. Typically, when we all get together for a parent gathering or a community event, it's community or pedagogical based, or a parent gathering or a coffee or a workshop, and those are all important parts of what we do. It's a rare occasion when we get to step out and look at our community as the corporation, as it is organized, as our governance model works, and of course, the exciting addition to this year's town hall, our strategy initiatives and our future directions, which we're going to talk a lot about tonight. For our people that are live streaming at home, the chat feature is enabled on the live stream, so you can interact with us from your home. Send us back any feedback that you have audio or visual or technical difficulties, and we'll certainly come to you a few different times during the Q&A so we can field some of the questions that you have this evening. Tonight, we'll hear from various members of our board and administration, looking at our school from about 10,000 feet, talking about development, talking about finance, talking about the Board of Trustees and governance, and then finally, and most excitedly, talking about our strategic planning initiative. We have a lot to share with you this evening, so I'm going to jump right in. Sound good? All right. We're going to begin, as we always do, and as we always should, with the mission statement of our school, theoretically. The live stream's working. The clicker's not. That's because I didn't have it on. Okay. I'm a good troubleshooter. That's good. Now that tech support has been called in, thank you. If you bear with me for just a moment, we're going to read through the mission statement together. The mission of Austin Montessori School is to guide the intellectual and character development of each child along a path towards his full and unknown potential. We strive to cultivate compassion and respect, independence and belonging, and freedom and self-discipline in rich academic and social environments that are designed for each plane of development and honor the complementary needs of the individual and the group. We value an educational setting that is inclusive and recognizes the authentic nature of the child and nurtures a reverence for the organic order of the universe. Through parent and staff education, we work to develop a school and family culture that preserves and protects a healthy childhood. Our aim is to serve children possessing an ample range of temperaments and a variety of learning styles and rates. At the same time, we seek to avoid pathologizing and labeling the normal range of children's behaviors and differences in learning. We are dedicated to Montessori's mission of world peace through human development. We're going to start this evening's program as we do each year. I'm going to move up just a little bit. With a school snapshot of how our school is organized in our campuses and our student population this year in 2019-2020. We have 351 students, 260 families on 3 campuses. Sunset Trail, where of course we have 2 youngest children's communities, 4 children's houses, 2 early elementaries, and 2 upper elementaries. Our Great Northern Campus, which contains 1 children's house and 1 elementary. And for those of you in the room, at Gaines Creek, where we house our adolescent community. And photos of each campus there on the slide. Oh, I should also say, particularly for those live streaming, but certainly for those in the room, there's a lot of information to absorb on the slides this evening. We are going to publish the slide deck, so you will have access to these to visit with them at your leisure. And the live stream is being recorded, so you can come back and reference the presentation through the same link that we sent out, and we'll send it out again with the slides and everything else, so you can just be present and absorb. Or take notes if you want to, it's up to you. Continuing our school snapshot between the three campuses, this shows you the range in the Austin and surrounding region from which we pull at our Great Northern Campus, at our Sunset Trail Campus, and at our Gaines Creek campus, where we have 45 families, 182 families, and 48 families, respectively. It's pretty exciting to look at that map, I find. A quick snapshot of our school's administration. Of course, you have me, I'm the head of school. Dawn Mihal, our Director of Operations. Sandy Bartholomew, our Business Manager. Amber Miller is our Amber, she certainly is. She's our Director of Admissions. Amanda Brown is our Director of Development. Lois O'Brien is our Head of School. Kelly Jarrell is our Great Northern Campus Coordinator. Jonna Shelton is our Sunset Trail Campus Coordinator. Sonal Bonus, our Librarian and Communications Coordinator. Shweta Pace is our Director of Outreach and Parent Engagement. Jenny Gonzalez, Early Childhood Director. Francis Fitzpatrick, our Elementary Director. Jesse Gevertz, our Adolescent Pedagogical Coordinator, Adolescent Program Pedagogical Coordinator. Bill Sneed, our Adolescent Program Administrative Coordinator. And Tom Logan, our Adolescent Program Guide. Just a quick snapshot of our recognitions and accreditation and licenses as a school. This is something that most people aren't necessarily connected with each day. Most significant of which, as most of you know, we are a school that is recognized by the Association Montessori International. That, of course, was the organization that Dr. Maria Montessori herself started to preserve the nature of the work that she put together in developing her methodology over 80 years. Think recognition equals accreditation. They're essentially our accrediting body. And the exciting news here that we actually did not include is in a slide here. AMI recognition actually only goes from birth through age 12. So that would include any 0 to 3 programming, our youngest children's community, Children's House, elementary, and it stops there because that's where Dr. Montessori essentially had to stop fleshing out her work because of her life expiring. But not long ago, as many of you know, the adolescent work has taken full force from the late 90s. As of this summer, for the first time ever, there is now an AMI diploma course for adolescent practitioners for the third plane, whereas heretofore it had only been an orientation. Now it is a full-bore training. What they are allowing is that anybody who has received the AMI orientation prior to now and has 5 years teaching experience, which is all of our staff at Gaines Creek, you can become trained with those credentials, or you can enter the training. Presumably, after a period of time, there will also be recognition for third plane programs as well, though that's not yet in development. Just a little FYI for you. Our accreditations are through the Association Montessori International Teachers of Texas, AMITOT, which license our early childhood and children's house programs, and the Texas Alliance of Accredited Private Schools, TAPS, who accredits the adolescent community program. Other affiliated organizations are listed there at the bottom. I'm not going to go through those one by one. So we wanted to just give you a snapshot of who we are, how many people we are, where we draw from this year, our recognition, accreditation, and licensing. And we also, administration, of course, but we also wanted to give a shout out to our Parents Association. Blythe Crow, president, is actually in the room. Thank you for all your work. This is their spring card all of you should have received in the mail about all the upcoming events that the PA is sponsoring or hosting, so I encourage you all to attend there. At this point, I am going to turn it over to the president of our Board of Trustees, David Spence, who's going to talk to you about the makeup of our corporation, the Board of Trustees, and their responsibilities, and so forth. David?
Thank you very much, Gray. Welcome, everybody, and welcome everybody at home. As Gray said, I'm David Spence, the president of the Board of Trustees. I'm just going to take a few minutes to introduce you to the board and the board's role in the governance of the school. I'm going to be very brief because we have much more interesting things to get to tonight. We did pass out bios here in the room of the Board of Trustees. And for those of you at home, you can find them on the website. If you go to the tab on the left that says About and you click on that tab, you'll see another tab for the Board of Trustees and you'll get full bios of the board. So I'm not going to read those or go over those in any detail, but I do want to talk a little bit about the sort of the activities of the board and the skill set the board brings to its recent work. We've gotten a lot busier lately because of the strategic plan. And so we're getting a lot of a lot more work to do, and we're bringing, the board has grown a little bit, and we're bringing, I think, I'm really happy with the skill set that the board brings to all these things. So let me just tick off a few things. So first of all, everybody on the board is almost everybody on the board is a parent of AMS children. Who I think almost all of whom went as far as they could go in AMS. The only person who isn't a parent on the board, but it's a voting member of the board, went to Austin Montessori School. And so that's Aaron Toohey. And so we are a group of people that are committed to this institution. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of skill set again. We have 3 engineers in our board. That's, I think, Clara Serrano, Chris Howard, and Sue Cozart, right? Engineers. We have a small business owner, Jenny Carloy, who owns the Inspiring Oaks Ranch out in Wimberley. We have a couple of physicians, Patrick Booth and Ann Stefani. We have an artist with a background in health services research, Maria Winchell. We have 2 lawyers on the board, Aaron Toohey and myself. We have a CPA and an MBA who owns her own consulting firm, Deborah Floyd. And we also have a PhD in cognitive psychology who also owns her own consulting firm that deals with strategy and leadership, and that's Maggie Walsh. And you're going to hear from Maggie a little bit later. I say this not to brag about the board's achievements, but to underscore that this group of people who cares about education, cares about their own kids' education, and is committed to Austin Montessori, is devoting their time to Austin Montessori and the sort of long-term future and vision of this school. And I just want to recognize people. We're all appreciative of the fact that people do devote that time. And let me just, before I get to the next slide, let me just call out for some special recognition in connection with the implementation of the strategic plan. Both Clara and Maggie, who are sitting here, have just gone above and beyond in the work that they've done to help sort of move us forward in the strategic planning, along with Gray. And I forgot to mention our ex officio members here. You all know Gray. But Sandy Bartholome is also an ex officio member of the board. The ex officio members are staff, and they don't vote on board decisions, but they are invaluable to what we do. Okay, the board of trustees, the role we have is fairly typical for a nonprofit organization in a school. We are responsible for the long-term, watching out for the long-term health of the school. We have a fiduciary duty to sort of look out for those sorts of interests. We are therefore involved in making sure that the financial integrity of the school is preserved. And also we are heavily involved in the strategic plan implementation. And so that's been, as I say, taking up a lot of our time. We oversee Gray, the head of school, reports to the board. And then it's Gray has operational responsibility beyond that. So when we deal with the school, we deal with the school through Gray. This is information that comes from the bylaws and the charter for the school, but our board has in the bylaws an established range of size, no more than 12 members. We have 11 voting members now. But we also have, that does not include the ex officio members. We do not allow current parents to be on the board. That's a policy decision. I should be more precise there. We are all still parents, but we're not parents of current Montessori AMS students, right? So you can't be on the board if you have a child in the school. That's what I'm trying to say. And the board members, in addition to attending board meetings and serving on board committees, are expected to contribute in other ways, and those ways are listed here in the bullets. I won't repeat them, but the board does participate in these ways. The latter couple of bullets here, we have a set of standing committees that meet in addition to the board meetings, and then we have a few sort of select committees that are associated with the strategic plan as well. And so the board members are not only doing the things that are listed on the slide, but they're also attending many of them, their committee meetings as well. And so we're working hard to try and move things forward and look out for the future. I want to mention one other piece of information that isn't really a board function, but it's something that I think parents might be interested in. And that is that on the website, we have a list of short biographies of alumni of Austin Montessori School. We've assembled a group of about 40 so far, and maybe more are coming. But they range from people that were in the very first class of Austin Montessori all the way up to relatively recent graduates. And they tell you about their path after they left Austin Montessori. And so you can go to that left tab, the one that's highlighted in red there, alumni profiles. And if you click on it, you'll get a page that looks like this with several categories of sort of professions or types of occupations that the alumni are involved in. And when you click on whoever you want to see, you'll get a bio that looks like these do. And they're fascinating. Our students do the greatest things. It's just so inspiring to read these. I had a role in drafting these and got to talk to them, and they're just doing all kinds of great stuff. They're doing well in the world, and it's worth, I hope that people get a chance to browse these because they're just terrific. That's all I really wanted to say. I'm going to pass it on now to Amanda, our development director, who's going to talk to you a little bit about development.
Hey, everybody. I just want to follow up on what David was talking about with the alumni profiles. We also are putting those in the weekly each week to kind of give them to you in small doses that you can read each week as you go. Hey, everybody. I'm Amanda. I'm the development director at Austin Montessori School. I just want to take a few minutes tonight to talk to you about development and what development is here at Austin Montessori. It's partnership. It's coming together in fellowship and friendship. It's support. It's support of the children, of the family as a whole, and of you all, or us now, as parents. And development here is really about community. And my goal here is to really make us remember why we're here, why we made the choice to be a part of this community, and why we find it so valuable to send our children to Austin Montessori School. My role at the school encompasses many things. I help facilitate grant funds from AISD for professional development for our staff. I work with Gray and on marketing opportunities for the school. I help plan community building events. And I also do a lot of fundraising. Fundraising at our school comes in the form of two major events, the annual fund and the gala. They are the only fundraisers we do for the school. So fundraising fits into our school in that the board sets our fundraising goal each year, and we plan on those funds because our operating expenses do not exceed our tuition revenue that comes in. And so that's where our fundraising comes into play. And the first of those two big initiatives that we do is annual fund. We are in annual fund right now. I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide for a second. So this year we posed the question for our annual fund of what's your why? And on the donor form, when parents made contributions, we gave them the opportunity to reflect on their why and to share that. So there are a few of these for you to look at while I'm talking. So ultimately, we all made a choice to be a part of this community. And that's why we're posing the question, what's your why? To connect parents back to the reason that we're a part of this great community. And that's really where the heart of my fundraising endeavors lie, is to remind everyone about that choice and their reasons, and to ask you to stand behind that why and contribute to the school. So I'm going to go back to that first slide. So this is a chart of the last 3 years in annual fund and where we've ended up. Last year, we made it to 96% parent participation, which was a record for the school and a pretty remarkable achievement for a nonprofit organization. I'm hoping that we can continue that momentum and surpass that goal this year. So this is a snapshot of parent participation and funds raised. I want to mention that we are at 100% staff and board participation. That means that every staff member contributed from their pocket toward our annual fund. And what that says is that we stand behind our mission. We stand behind what we do here at Austin Montessori School. And we hope that all of the parents join us. So as of this afternoon, we have 265 gifts total. We're at 75% participation. We have till the end of the week. I find that parents respond well to the deadline. Oh, yes, I've been meaning to do that. So I have every confidence that we will get up there into the 90s and potentially beat our all-time record from last year. This year, we've had 41 gifts of $1,000 or more. I just want to point out that these gifts really carry a lot of weight. Last year, we ended our fund with 36 gifts of $1,000 or more, which accounted for 64% of the funds raised in our annual fund. These larger gifts carry a lot of weight and help us reach our goals. And while those are important, you might wonder if I'm not able to contribute in this grand way. Why does my contribution matter? It does, because our participation is the only real quantifiable way to show organizations that we're going to partner with and within our internal community the support and solidarity of our parent engagement. And so it really is an important metric. It's a way to look at participation no matter the amount you're able to contribute to our school. So it all kind of comes back to your reason why. Your donation, no matter the size, it shows your support for the school, that you believe in our mission and vision, and that you're invested in this community. And each and every contribution, it matters a lot. So when we meet our goals and exceed them, it allows us to grow the annual fund and allows us to, as we grow as an organization, to continue to grow these initiatives. So thank you to everyone who has participated so far, made phone calls, sent emails. It's a group effort, and we have till the rest of the week. So let's try to meet our goals. The next big event we have coming up is the gala. So here's a little recap of last year. For those of you who don't know, the gala is an adult-only event. It happens in the spring. It's a night for staff, current parents, alumni board to come together and celebrate Austin Montessori School. Last year, we had strong attendance at our event. It was at the JW Marriott. We had a live and silent auction as normal, mystery boxes, we had a raffle, and new last year was a photo booth, which was super fun. We had incredible sponsor support last year. Most of our larger features were underwritten by parent-owned businesses. So those of you who were able to sponsor us last year, thank you so much. We also had lots of parent volunteers. This is a huge event that I absolutely cannot put on without the help of parents in the community. You'll see at the bottom, last year we always have a Raise Your Paddle initiative. Last year it was for realizing our vision. The previous 2 years, our Raise Your Paddle was for our future fund, which was to help engage a strategic planning firm and then to help us through that process. Last year, after our strategic plan was unveiled, we raised our paddles to help us realize our vision and any immediate near-term projects that were coming out of that plan. We raised over $43,000 that night to help toward that initiative, which was pretty fantastic. It was a great event full of community and fun, and I'm looking forward to this year. Gala 2020, we're going to be at the JW Marriott again. It's going to be on April 18th, so mark your calendars, look for a babysitter. A lot of the features will be similar. It will feel familiar. I have some very exciting new things that I'm, really looking forward to telling you about. There's going to be a lot more information that comes out in the coming weeks as soon as we wrap up annual fund. I kind of do it one at a time. So I'm really excited about this event and wrapping up annual fund, and I hope you'll all join me in supporting the school and living those reasons why. And that's all I have for you guys. And Clara is up next.
Clicker. Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Clara Serrano, and I'm a longtime board member and parent of 3 kids that are adults now that went all the way through the school. I am not this year's treasurer of the Austin Montessori School Board of Trustees. The treasurer is Sue Cozart. She's been doing a phenomenal job as treasurer. She unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, so I'm actually presenting her slides. So bear with me. But again, as Grace said, this is a little bit of a unique meeting at the school where you kind of get to look a little bit behind the scenes on kind of the corporation and how we operate. And a piece of that, of course, is our financial health and our financial operations. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the finance aspects of the school, kind of from a board point of view. So this chart, if you've been to these meetings before, you've seen them before. It's a very unusual graph, and it's quite different from maybe our home and family budget. Your home and family budget generally expects a pretty steady income, and you don't want your expenses to go too crazy outside of your sort of, probably a much flatter curve here. But a school gets its income, a large majority of its income at, we have some people that pay monthly, but other families that pay all of their tuition up front. So when we look at our cash position, we have to really be very conscious about when we spend how much money because of the way cash comes in. So you can see that back in 2010-11 school year, right around the April month, things start to get a little bit dicey because we're kind of pretty much right out of cash. And at that point of time, 10 years ago, we were actually, just couldn't wait to get the tuition payments for the following year to be able to make payroll and pay the bills. So that's kind of giving you a little bit of a historical view. So obviously, when we really started looking at that carefully and coming up with some mechanisms for how we were going to manage that cash flow over the course of the last 10 years, that top line is kind of where we were in the 2018-19 school year. So that blue line at the bottom was the one I just showed you. It's a little bit more squished because you can see the scale has changed quite a bit. So what we've been really working on is trying to get the school in a stronger cash position so that we don't get anywhere near that kind of trouble. And we our goal at the very bottom, you can see we're trying to get to where we can cover at least 6 months worth of expenses in what we have as our cash in cash reserves. So that's been our goal right now. We're at about 4.6 months of that. So what we've been doing is year by year increasing sort of the bottom level of this of that graph, that curve, so that we can more comfortably be able to handle unexpected expenses or unexpected changes in our income. So you can see the average amount of cash that we had in 2010-2011 was $243,000. Well, right now our expenses are running in the high 300,000s a month, but you can see that in the 18-19 school year, we were averaging more around $1.6 million as our average cash position. Something else that maybe a lot of you don't think about regarding the school and how we operate, the school has debt. So we and all of our debt is related to properties. We've got three pretty extensive campuses. We have been paying off. We've paid off a couple of property loans in the last couple of years, and this year, when was it? I guess about a year ago, we purchased the final property on Sunset Trail. So we had to put in some down payment. So paying off those debts and that down payment on that final property, that all came out of that cash reserves that we had. So anyway, this is just to give you an idea. Our current debt obligation is about $1.1 million. And we monitor this pretty closely. Some of the financing has balloon payments coming up, and that's some of the workings of the board is kind of managing how we balance how much debt we want to have at any particular period of time. Something else that, behind the scenes, I know you all, as parents in particular, are so appreciative of staff and care, and a great deal about is our staff being taken care of, and how can we keep staff long term, et cetera. Well, this chart is to show you a little bit about what we've done. We both collectively, the administration and the board. A lot of it comes from recommendations from the administration that the board then evaluates and approves. We've increased the 403 retirement match from 4% to 5% back in 2018. And we've been increasing sort of the amount of assets in our retirement plan for our teachers. So, they have life insurance, short and long-term disability, medical and dental, and vision insurance, and then tuition remission. So anyway, just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea that benefits is a piece of our investment in our faculty. And then this is no big surprise. These are our sources of income, mostly tuition and fees. The fundraising is an important slice, but this is kind of what our income distribution looks like. And then on the expenses side, again, no big surprise there. It's salary and benefits is the largest piece of that pie. And you can see, our debt payments are 3.8%. Facilities, we do continue to invest in our facilities, and then a few other expense categories there. And you can look at more of that, I think, in the annual report that are printed out back there. And then just to give you, this is a very high-level summary of the budget for the 2019-20 current school year, where we are right now. And again, we monitor these things on a pretty close basis, on a monthly basis, with Sandy Bartholomew in the business office, and constantly looking to see, where unexpected items, trying to minimize unexpected items, and putting processes in place to really manage that. I added this chart in there. It's kind of small to see, but when you maybe get the handout, you might want to look at. Tuition is often a big question that parents have when they're join a private or an independent school. And Austin Montessori School is down on the sort of the right third of this graph with the hash marks. That's kind of where we are relative to a lot of other schools, private schools in Austin. A few of the schools are from out of town. The ones with asterisks are other Montessori schools that are kind of comparable to ours. So the two with the arrows here, Atlanta Springmont, it's a 50-plus-year-old school that's about the size of this school. And then Portland Child Peace, also with the other yellow arrow in Portland, Oregon. And that, again, another sort of similar sister school to ours. You can see, we really are trying to keep our tuition as modest as we can. And we look at this. We look to see where we rank compared with other schools in Austin and other schools around the country. And one thing that, so the school is 53 years old, and we have just completed our first financial audit, outside audit. Yeah, this was a big, it's an important thing to do as a nonprofit. The school, as having been, sort of founder-led for so long, didn't embark on this, and now we really felt it was a very important thing, and it is a very important thing, certainly as we look to outside organizations for support and partnership. So anyway, this is something we're very proud of. The opinion statement basically says we're good. We were able to produce enough documentation about all of our expenses and income and everything else from the last number of years to really be able to start with a really good, clean audit. So we're very proud of that. And another thing, just again, this really isn't a board level thing as much, but just again, in talking about staff and sort of compensation for staff development is a really big priority here at Austin Montessori School. And we've done quite a number, that takes on many different forms. Gray really manages this. This is all managed out of the administration. But, we have our school is kind of known in the industry, if you will, for having a very, very committed budget line item for staff development. And we have absolutely world-class staff here, but we're always continuing to invest in them in terms of their continuing professional growth. And I am going to turn it over now to Maggie Walsh, who David mentioned a little bit. She really has been spearheading our strategic planning, and this is kind of the big punchline of the most exciting information that we have to share at tonight's town hall. So Maggie, thank you very much.
I'm not the punchline. Gray is the punchline. I'm standing here talking to you because I have a background in working with organizations around executing strategies. So I'm curious, before I talk just briefly, how many of you were involved in the work that we did with Ian Simmons earlier, either in meetings, okay, gave money, participated in the survey? Most of the people in the room. So that was a lot of work, and it took us what seemed like a long time. And what came out of that was kind of the end of phase 1 of our strategy work, and that was the destination, where it is that we're going. And this is what we all as a community came up with in terms of where we're going. The vision is for us to be a connected, cohesive, sustainable school community that supports the optimal development of children and families from prenatal through 18 years of age. Now, what's critical to making that happen is something that you don't see in this statement, and that is that our vision really is that we are a place, a school, a community that does such a good job supporting not just the development of our children, but the whole child and the family, that people want to get here as early as they can and stay through this entire journey. So Gray's going to talk more about that when he explains some of what we've been doing with our work. So the first part of that journey is coming up with where we're going, all right? Now, how many of you have planned a big vacation, maybe a 20th anniversary or some big trip you're going to take with your family? So the first thing you have to do is decide where you're going, right? That's what we've done. The second thing you have to figure out is how you're going to get there, okay? So I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, my family would take these 2 or 3 week driving vacations because I had one set of grandparents who lived in the east and one set who lived in the west. And so each year we had a destination that we were going to, and we would plan the time we were leaving, decide the route that we were going to take. Today, you can fly, you can drive, you can take a train, you can take a bus. But between here and Boston, there are a lot of different ways to go, all right? So you choose a route, which is what you do when you start to execute a strategy. But I guarantee you, if your family was like my family, you run into detours. And those detours can look like a sick kid, an accident, a flat tire, a roadblock. And you have to figure out how to get to Boston or wherever you're going by taking that detour. And often, if you have your eyes open, you learn something while you're on that detour that you wouldn't have otherwise learned. So, phase 2 of our strategy is to execute. We have a plan. You guys helped us create it. We started off on a road. We're on that road. But we're going to hit, and we are hitting some detours. And the fun thing is that when you execute strategy, you don't know what you don't know until you start down that road. And so this is going to be a deliberate process of discovery. And it's going to take us a while. My kids started the school in the year 2000. There wasn't a board of directors. There wasn't a parent organization. There were great, dedicated people who were committed to doing the work that Maria Montessori started 100 years ago. We have taken a lot of steps since I joined the board. By the way, how many of you are parents of current students? Watch out, because my last daughter graduated, and 6 months later I was on the board, and that was 9 years ago. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. So anyway, long story short, we're going to be making some changes as we go along. So things are not going to look exactly like the plan that we created. Do I have my next slide? I think I do. Oh, no. Oh. Okay, well, that wasn't the one I thought it was, but I'll talk about this. This is the other thing I was supposed to do, is supposed to lend some credibility to this process. So here's what I'm gonna say. I've spent 20 years working in strategy execution. I've done research on what keeps organizations from making big changes, what kind of defeats the goals that they have. And these are the things that you have to look for. And these are the things that we are keeping our eyes closely on as we execute this strategy, that we have the support of the people who work here, that we have deep involvement of the leadership of this school, including the board. You heard David talk about how many of us are involved in this, and there are a lot of hours going into it. And that we are being very careful about how much change is happening when. Because the fact is that we have to drive this car down that path while we're changing the tires. And we've got to do that very carefully so that we don't lose anything along the way. We need people who know how to do the work that we're having to do. And so as we go, we're teaching ourselves how to do it. And we have to stop when we have a detour and correct our course and figure out how we're going to get where we need to go. When people have to change things, we want to make sure we make it as simple as possible. And work effort. Everybody here is working really hard. So we're being very conscious, particularly for staff and leadership, about how much time they're having to put into all of this and making choices to make sure that it's reasonable and well-meaning. So I think that is pretty much what I wanted to say. And just remember, we're on a process of deliberate discovery. We're learning as we go. And Gray's got some really interesting things to talk about in terms of what we've learned already.
Thank you, Maggie. Excuse me just a moment. I cannot talk behind this thing. Sorry to the viewers at home. I just can't do it. I've got to move. All right. The first thing I wanted to share with you, and this is just a refresher for those that participated and new information for those of you that weren't a part of this process, just a real high level how we got to where we are. We went through a strategic planning process beginning in 2017. The process took about 18 months to complete. Essentially, it's designed to define and articulate a future state of Austin Montessori School. That's not revelatory. A 5-year plan with 10-year implications. And we made the conscious choice to divide it into 2 different timelines initially. Phase 1, which comprises spring 2019 through June 2021, and then phase 2, June 2021 through 2024. The plan is each of the phases is divided and prioritized into annual goals and standard operating procedure best practices. Anytime you have a long-range plan, you set forth, but then you revisit and actually go through the entire planning process again about 4 years in, a bit of a recalibration based on the path of discovery that we've been on. We articulated when we unveiled the plan last April, there was a little more detail than this, but a real high-level timeline of what phase 1 was designed to do, in that we had different groups working on different categories of things: program design, facilities analysis and planning, optimal enrollment modeling, marketing and communications is another that's not on here. All of that diligence, design, planning, exploration, execution, and work was to, at the end of spring 2021, be able to have clearly articulated a facilities and otherwise master plan where we would be able to conceptually show you the future state of the school. Here's where we're going. How we're going to get there. That's what that calculator right there is designed to show you. It's actually a building. Dawn thinks it's a calculator. And so that's that. That's where we were. That's where we are. But I want to call a timeout, because one of the things that this has really given us occasion to do, and those of us that are immersed in this work do this in one way or another somewhat all the time, but not on the organizational level like we are now, where we've got every constituent group engaged. We've got volunteers on committees. We've got staff. we've got parents, we've got board members, we've got working groups that I'm going to talk about in a few moments. You really get to take the organization and look at what we do from all kinds of different angles and all kinds of interrelated interdependencies, from macro to micro, from macro to micro, and all points in between, from this angle, from that angle, holistically in 360 degrees. So I want to take the opportunity tonight for all of us to just for a moment pan out and maybe visit with what we're going to talk about through the following lens. First is why. And not to take too long on this, but I want to tell you a personal story because it may resonate with some of your own journey in the room and how you came into Montessori. I didn't come into Montessori as a parent. I came into Montessori as a 23-year-old, didn't know what the hell was going on. The first time I heard about Montessori was after a game of pool over a Budweiser at 23 Steps, a bar in Chapel Hill. I was making money as a musician at the time, but had friends who were in education, and I always had some sort of unclarified idea that there was a better way to do it than the public system that I had gone through. This is not to disparage the public system. This is a reflection on my own experience. Montessori, what is that? Great, that sounds super cool. Is a bar conversation, okay? Well, it turns out a couple of months later, that same friend and I were talking again. My primary money-making band had just broken up and I needed a job, okay? And it just so happens, this was December of that year, that she was an intern in a children's house classroom at Montessori Community School, excuse me, in Durham, North Carolina. And it was an all-day classroom, and their afternoon primary assistant had left, went back to New York, and so they needed someone to come in and work part-time in their children's house classroom. So here I am, first of all, terrified, because I don't know what to say to a 3-year-old. I'm 23 years old at the time. But I take, long story short, I take the job, and I was, after the first week, I was completely blown away by what I saw in the room. Now, mind you, what I saw in the room was colored through the lens of my experience. And my experience at the time and my understanding of education was largely through the lens of academia. So I was super impressed to see 4-year-olds doing multiplication, right? That was wow, okay? I didn't do multiplication until I was, I don't know, 2nd grade, maybe? So that was super impressive. The way the children were moving around the room and interacting with one another was like nothing I'd ever seen before. But I didn't know what it was all about. I wasn't trained. I was an assistant that came from 3 to 6 every day. Yeah, I did what they told me to do and didn't do it particularly well. I cannot imagine if I went back and observed myself in that environment now, what I would think. Why am I sharing all this? Well, that was my why at the time. These guys are onto something here. I want to know more about this. I ran their after-school program for a couple of years while serving as an assistant in a 4th grade classroom in the Chapel Hill public school system. Quite the contrast of environments in any given day, you might imagine. Then the real change began to happen, and that school sponsored me to go to get my Montessori elementary training. That is as transformative experience as you could possibly ask for as an adult. You get an entirely new orientation, at this point theoretical, because I'd actually never stepped foot in an elementary classroom. Kudos to the school for training me with that lack of experience. Theoretical for me at that time. And you engage with what we call the disciplines, curriculum, in a completely different way, in a way that's interconnected, the way that is, interconnected, not taught in drawers. And so I go into the classroom and you practice and you give your lessons and it's a great environment that fosters independence, empowers children. That's great. That's what I'm doing. That's where I live. I go to adolescents. I connect with them on a very human level, prepare environment. I'm doing the thing that is Montessori. Whoops, I skipped a step of the story. Between me working in upper elementary and going into adolescence, I went back to Patuxent, Maryland, and worked at Patuxent Montessori School for 1 year. And my colleague at the time, Suzanne DiMatteo, who was the elementary guide and lead administrator there, we would often have theoretical conversations in the afternoons after school. And one day, she was telling me about a book written by a woman named Donna Bryant Gertz. And she wasn't talking about the specifics. I mean, she told me the title of the book and shared some of the vignettes. But she goes, you know what? Donna says it. And she's like, oh my gosh, it makes perfect sense to me now. I get it. I get why we're doing here. And she goes, world peace. We're here for world peace. And I'm like, what? We're a school. There's like 20 people here. You know, how is that possible? That's too out there, Suzanne. I can't digest that right now. Right? So I kind of dismissed it, but it never went away. You go on through your journey. You work when you work in different environments. You get a little older, get a little wiser, debatably. And things start to click for you, and you see things in a different light than you ever have before. That piece that I just told you that Suzanne told me about from reading Donna's book didn't click for me, truthfully, until I got here. And what I was afforded, I'm sorry, when I got here was because you practice, you have this methodology, we have this orientation towards human development, we're doing the thing that is Montessori, we're preparing the environment, we're doing all that stuff, okay? You know, you get here, and under the mentorship of Donna, and seeing how clearly and with what such clarity that she had refined her practice, not only in her classroom, but for the school, to the parent body, then becoming a parent, it's like, okay, I get it. What's our why here? World peace isn't something that somebody that's barefooted and flowers in their hair with a peace sign in San Francisco is talking to you about. World peace is not a world without conflict. World peace is from a better humanity living with purpose, with clarity, with an embodiment of understanding of their place in the world and the interdependency of all things, able to work in a collaborative way across cultures, across ethnicity, across creed, across all of those things. The only way that's possible is to start when you're below zero in an environment that is crafted to foster you to be able to develop under those conditions. That's our why. That's as big as it gets, but that's what we're doing here. The more we do it, you as parents probably didn't choose Austin Montessori School or the journey for your child based on the really, really broad notion of world peace. Cool if you did, but that probably wasn't necessarily on your list of 1, 2, 3 and school shopping pieces, right? If it was, come talk to me. I really want to know more about that. But you can take that and you can apply that from the macro down to the micro. Look at what we're doing. Take the basic developmental tenets. Take our understanding of what's possible with the human condition and how we're trying to apply it. And you can feel that if in the first steps of our partnership with families at the school, whether it's with infants, whether if it's with YCC, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and we're doing it well. Which leads me to, what do we do? This is an excerpt from the mission statement that I read for you at the beginning of the night. I'm not going to read through it again. But this is our why. This is our what. What we have taken a step back to re-examine and are doing so right now in a very intentional fashion over the last 2 years and the next few years is the how. Now, I would argue that we do at Austin Montessori School, I can say this because I'm not responsible for this, I'm not tooting my own horn, we do it pretty well. Can we do it better? Yeah. How can we do it better? To be a connected, cohesive community that supports the optimal development of children and families from prenatal through 18 years of age, all the way through. That's what this is about. And that I'm going to share a lot of details of the different groups, the different working groups for the strategic plan and all the stuff that we've been doing. Pretend this slide is the river upon which all that stuff's floating, because this is what it's about. This is why we're doing what we're doing. There have been points in the office or in a working group where we've gone, you know, if we just didn't open this Pandora's box, we could have just kept doing what we were doing and we'd all been the better off for it. But then you pan back out and go, no, we can do this better. We can do this better for our AMS community. We can do it better for our local Austin community. We can partner with our families better. We can work harder and more connected as a community. And we can matriculate more and more of these kinds of humans into the world. That, to me, is our generation's responsibility. Because, man, are we dumping a world's worth of problems on them. Okay, time in. All right. Now let's look at specifically how we have set forth on this journey, because if you'll remember from the unveiling, and we of course don't have the time to go back through all of those things this evening, you know, it was big work. We had 3 different pillars of strategic priorities that touched all kinds of different parts of the school. You know, our first big task was going, okay, as a board of trustees and administration, how on earth are we going to organize ourselves in some sort of pragmatic and logistical fashion so that we can execute this? And that's what I want to tell you about this evening, with this part. So we have what we call strategic working groups that currently, at this point, comprise 29 members of AMS staff, board, or other outside experts. The Board of Trustees formed an ad hoc strategy committee. This strategy committee is comprised of board members, 2 members of the administration, Don Mihal and me. This is the cog in the center of the wheel. All of the working groups that I'm going to be talking about to you this evening report to the strategy committee. We're chartered by the strategy committee. The strategy committee thereby reports at every board meeting every 4 to 6 weeks to the board and gives strategic updates. The strategy committee is comprised of, I said before, each of the working group members, each of the working groups has a member of the strategy committee sitting on the working group. So, strategy committee is sort of the cog in the center of the strategic implementation wheel. We have a strategic enrollment management committee, working group, We have a marketing and communications working group. We have a programs working group that is divided into 2 sub-working groups, 0 to 3 years old and 15 to 18 years old programming. And we have a facilities strategic working group. Now, one of the things that we knew at the outset conceptually, and it has certainly manifested this way, was that all of these, and this is going to be an obvious point, all of these working groups are interrelated and have all kinds of interdependencies, right? One of the things that we set as a standing agenda item for each of the working groups and each of their sessions was identifying interdependencies. In order to do or know this, we need to know this piece of information from strategic enrollment management, for example. Does that make sense? So, and that is exactly what has manifest. And so it is through this model and design that we are hoping to realize our green star future state. But let's unpack some of the specifics. It's not gold, it's green, okay? But let's do a deeper dive on each one of the working groups and let you know precisely what they're working on right now. Okay, first, we're going to start with strategic enrollment management. And to do that, I need to give you a brief orientation as to how enrollment models in independent schools, specifically independent Montessori schools, often work. They are often a triangle shaped, if you think of them conceptually, in terms of having way more children in the early years and having fewer and fewer as their program. Some Montessori schools, as you probably know, only go through Children's House. Some have elementary, some have upper adolescent. And so the way that Montessori schools have naturally evolved over time, it lends itself even to this model, right? And so our current model, at the very highest level, to give you a snapshot of our triangle, currently we have 145 children in Children's House, and we have 48 adolescents at Gaines Creek. And it's working. But not if we really consider our why. Not if we filter our why through our what and how. if we really want to be effective and really do the best job that we can, we want to partner with families before their children are born, and as many as possible. And we want those families to stay in our school for as long as they can, which hopefully coincides with as far as our programming goes. Because that is a mission imperative to achieve our why. So that needs attention. You can just look at this slide and know that. Deeper dive coming. So the Strategic Enrollment Management Group was tasked with understanding our current state enrollment, retention, attrition, inflection points, when people are leaving, why people are leaving, right? This is good data to have to be able to improve upon and operate. And then also, speaking of interdependencies, as you know, there's a program design working group that's conceptualizing new programming for the school. What does a future state enrollment model need to look like to make those new programs possible? Okay. So in the right now, here's what the Strategic Enrollment Management Group, by the way, I didn't mention this, the implementation, we did our unveil last April. The implementation part really started in June. There was some work done over the summer, but really began in earnest this fall when school started again. And so I should have done this at the very, very beginning. I need to acknowledge in all caps and express gratitude to the board, to the strategy committee, to all the working groups, because they have been working their you-know-what's off. We have really come a long way. We're tracking to and beyond where we thought we'd be in phase one. A lot of people have done a lot of work here, and I hope that's reflected tonight. So thank you to those in the room and those who couldn't be here. So completed so far for Strategic Enrollment Management. We have accomplished a 3-year attrition analysis for our Great Northern campus. A 3-year attrition report has been created for our Sunset Trail campus. We have recommended a facility strategy working group formation ahead of schedule. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. Initially in the phase one timeline, the facilities strategic committee, you heard back in the board presentation, a standing committee of the facilities committee of the board, which is best operational practice, was formed early fall. That's going to be there long after the strategic plan is gone. Based on the conceptualization of the initial phase one timeline, where the facilities master plan wasn't coming from until 18 to 24 months from now, that wasn't going to happen until later. But based on what I'm going to show you in a minute, that recommendation has been made to start that now. What's in progress here? A further analysis of the attrition data for Sunset Trail, enrollment modeling for current and future states, identifying key inflection points and level transitions, and retention improvement strategies. Now, the next slide is very visually exciting. Give me a minute to walk you through it. This is our triangle with a little bit more detail, okay? This is our current enrollment model, aptly titled. We have a parent-infant community. We have just about to have 3 youngest children's communities. As you know, hopefully in late spring, our new all-day, all-year YCC will open. We have 3 youngest children's communities on Sunset Trail, feeding into 4 children's house communities, feeding into 2 early L, 2 upper L, and then Gaines Creek, right? That's how our school's set up now. And at Great Northern, at this point, we have 1 children's house community feeding into 1 early L that ultimately feeds into 1 upper L. Well, if you do a deep dive and look at this, which we did, a few key things stand out. I'm going to stand on this side. I hope I don't go out of the picture. These are much smaller communities, 12 children each, and so this pipeline works quite smoothly, okay? But here you have 4, I should stay on this side because they can't see me, 4 children's houses feeding into 2 early Ls, okay? Which would suggest there's a fair amount of attrition moving as the children, or that occurs as the children matriculate through the children's house 3 to 6-year-old classroom. For the last 2 years or so, our early elementaries have been full. And so we've been thinking, it's probably not too long that we might have to consider opening another early elementary classroom should we improve our retention, right? Let me move you to the next model here. Similar slide, nothing's changed except a couple of boxes have shifted. So if we were to improve our retention by just a little bit right now, right, that would probably, and based on what we talked about a minute ago, we're doing a deep dive on how we can improve our retention a lot, but just a little bit. That's going to lead to the need to probably create a new early elementary community at Sunset Trail, potentially, right? Well, if that happens, before I put this up here, right now you've got 2 early L's full feeding into 2 upper L's. That's eventually might necessitate us needing to open a new upper elementary community. Now, mind you, this is not a response to some grandiose future state vision in mind. This is an acknowledgement of current state and just some improvement along the way here, right? So this would be a true reality absent any kind of strategy. Fortunately, those 2 things have mapped on top of each other, so we have a more comprehensive understanding of it. But we'll pause there, okay? So we know that we're doing 0 to 3 planning. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Perhaps there's an expanded parent-infant offering or something of the like at Sunset Trail, serving more 0 to 3 families. We have considered, and it has been asked, to have 0 to 3 offerings at Great Northern, to potentially a YCC. So just based on overlaying some of our strategic initiative program design for 0 to 3 into this model, we now have this. Well, one of the questions that strategic enrollment management had for the third plane design group, which is comprised largely of our Gaines Creek staff and a few others, just with consideration of this phenomenon manifesting. What would happen if we had 2 more classrooms feeding you under your current configuration and under your current capacity, under your current staffing, facilities, the whole list? Could you be larger than you are? And the answer is no, for a lot of very good reasons that I won't go into right now. Could it be achieved in another way? Yes. Under our current configuration, no. Play this potentiality forward. Does that mean we need to rethink how we're doing things here? Playing it even further, feeding a high school. Now, here's what's interesting. As part of the high school design group's work, and this is also going to be an obvious point, part of it is identifying what the ideal size for a high school at Austin Montessori School would be, okay, and then working in conjunction with the strategic enrollment management group to say, okay, well, if we have I'm making this up, this is hypothetical, this does not reflect any kind of conversation that's happened concretely in the background, so don't take this and run. Let's say we have a high school of such, and we wanted it to be filled with 80% Austin Montessori School students. That would take this many as a feeder. So we were having to think of, and we'll conceptualize, a top-down enrollment model, but where a synergy here is occurring quite nicely is that we're also being forced to, for very good reasons, to rethink a bottom-up enrollment model that might facilitate some expansion. Might those 2 things meet in the middle quite nicely? Maybe so. Now, listen to me carefully here. This is a conceptual model. I'm not saying what you're seeing is going to happen, but it is a very real reality that we need to prepare for, which is precisely why the Strategic Enrollment Management Group, working group, went back to the strategy committee with a recommendation to charter the facilities design working group right now, because we need to start thinking about future state in terms of evolving current state as well, not just some when we finish in 2 years and start to create what is new, right? So does that all make sense to you conceptually how we arrive there? So that's a lot to get through, but that's really big conceptual work, as you might imagine. Okay, moving forward, getting into programs. So we have, as I mentioned to you before, 2 subgroups working on 2 different ends of what we call the developmental continuum, and the 2 groups that we are underserving the most. 0 to 3, just in terms of numbers, and 15 to 18, we don't have that at all. So here's what's been done and is in progress for our programs for 0 to 3. Now the design component and the work for the 0 to 3 group is a little bit different because AMI has already articulated some different types of programming for 0 to 3 in the form of a NIDO, which is a prepared environment for infants, and a parent-infant program, which we have now. And I'm happy to unveil the name of the new all day, all year, YCC is going to be Dragonfly Garden. Woohoo, that's cool, right? So this work is in progress. We have been in a permitting adventure with the city of Austin for many more months than we anticipated. We are finally getting some concrete movement on that. Based on current information, and I will qualify this with based on current information, we are still on target for a late spring 2020 opening for that community, which will be in 4912 Sunset Trail. What's in progress? So we articulated and became very clear with this working group what AMI has defined as these kinds of programs, and then filtered that through, okay, what do we want those programs to look like at Austin Montessori School? What of this do we want to have to serve our families? And so right now we are planning, in the beginning of the planning processes, of some kind of expanded parent-infant offering. You can reach more people that way. You can reach more family, adult parents directly that way, whereas the NIDO program has components of that built in, but not in the pronounced way that a parent-infant does. And along with that, planning a curriculum and workshops for pre and postnatal that we would hopefully offer to our families, and hopefully have some community outreach components because we have a certain expertise and orientation to development that we feel like would serve our greater community. So that's the focus of their work right now. This planning is, I don't want to attach a date to it, but this planning is beginning in earnest, and you're going to see some real concrete movement and changes around that in the near term rather than long term. When I say near term, I mean within the calendar year. But I can't be more specific than that just now because the planning is still underway. Now, for 15 to 18, here's where we are with high school. What has been completed? We have interviewed Montessori high school leaders around the country. Now, I want to pause here and talk a little bit about that. There are a number of different models, prototype models in recent years of Montessori high schools or Montessori influenced high schools or Montessori hybrid high schools around the country that accomplish what they do for 15 to 8-year-olds in different ways, based on whether they're in an urban environment, based on if there's slight philosophical differences, etc. And so we wanted to connect with a number of different schools in different areas with different models to hear how they are taking the AMI orientation to adolescents and applying it where they are, with their place, in their community, with their resources, with their demographic, all those factors. Because what our task with as we design a high school for Austin Montessori School, what elements of that, what do we want an Austin Montessori high school to look like? Because that is, in my mind, is something of distinction and something that needs to be approached mindfully and intentionally, using all of the resources available to us. And so that was the first thing that we did. We reached out to our colleagues around the country and did sort of deep dive conversations with them. We then, much like the board did for their big work with the strategy in general, this working group created, okay, how are we going to organize our work? How are we going to, this is a big, big task. So we spent some time creating a planning framework and steps that we could move through the planning phase. The first thing that we did, and I am super proud of this, we as an institution are super proud of this, and I think that it reflects our dedication to what we do. We didn't start with what's it going to look like, what are we going to have, what are these accoutrements? We started, wait, who is it that we're trying to serve? What are the distinct developmental characteristics of the 15 to 18-year-old moving from the first subplane to 12, 15-year-old, understanding the third plane as a holistic trajectory, understanding how this environment is crafted and designed to serve a 12 to 15-year-old. What would the extension be like? What are the distinct developmental needs and characteristics of the 15 to 18-year-old? Let's agree and reach consensus on that. Then with that, that's going to be our North Star through which we're going to filter everything else. So we spent some time on that. From that, we began to articulate what we consider core elements of a prepared environment for the 15 to 18-year-old, the logical next extension of that. That's where we've gotten so far. The work that's in progress, we're going to take those core elements. I've kind of categorically given you some examples there, but it's organization and development of and further fleshing out of those elements, and that's every part of the content: physical prepared environment, curriculum, support services, physical plant, extra, I mean, all of it, anything that you can imagine, into the organization. Then we'll do a deep dive into each area. And then again, like I said before, the enrollment model piece where we're trying to look at what's the ideal size, the ideal cohort, what can we sustain, etc. So a lot of work's been done, a lot of work on the deck, a lot of movement. I would say that they're tracking ahead of schedule as it was originally conceived for the high school design. So that's really exciting. Moving into our next subgroup, marketing and communications. I didn't bring any of my talking points over here. I wonder how I'm doing. I have a whole list of things to talk about. 20% maybe. Marketing and communications, this strategic group, so far they have established a partnership that will help with a media company that will help craft and implement a marketing and communication strategy. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this because in my mind, a marketing and communication strategy, that sounds real corporate speak, and it's not just about advertising the school to get bodies in the door. Of course, that's a component of it. We want to be able to reach potential partnerships and have people come to us, right? But we also want to have a platform through which we can share our resources, our orientation with the larger world, broadcast thought leadership. We have multitudes of platforms that we can do that now. We can now reach way larger groups of people than we could before when it required someone physically to go and present at a professional development conference here, or present at a parenting conference here, or whatever, or at a school over here. Now we have multiple channels of communication. So it's not just about getting people in the door. It's about connecting with people. It's about sharing values, sharing mission, sharing our orientation to development. So that's a part of what this is as well. Other work that's underway, we set forth to revise our mission statement to capture our mission and in essence a little bit more succinctly so that we could communicate it in a digestible morsel. Our mission statement is beautiful and none of those words are going away. It will be the new mission statement and those other, everything's still there under school objectives, statement of purpose, something of the sort. This work is actually complete. I cannot unveil it to you yet because it is on the agenda to be presented to the Board of Trustees next week. So we've been working on that and completed as a competitive market analysis of our Great Northern Campus region was also done. In progress, facilitate creation of a new visual identity for the school. We are currently working with a firm to create a new logo and visuals for Austin Montessori School. The logo that was the logo for, or is the logo for Austin Montessori School. There used to be a section of our old website that described its creation and evolution, and it was never, I think, designed to be the permanent logo of the school. So we are actually working on that right now in partnership with the firm. This next piece extends from this. We've established the partnership. Now the real work begins, working with the new media partners on the communication strategy, and then, of course, the marketing plan implementation. Now, and then finally, facilities. And as I suggested to you through both the strategic enrollment management, the strategic enrollment management slides, at the recommendation of the Strategic Enrollment Management Committee, this group was just formed by the Strategy Committee in December of 2019. Work that the board was already doing dovetails nicely with this facilities creation. It was under the auspices of the Facilities Committee of the board, but will overlap directly with the Facility Strategy Committee. We completed a comprehensive facilities condition assessment of all three campuses by a company called Alpha Facility Solutions. This was essentially a comprehensive reserve study on our entire physical plant, all of our buildings, that gives us great data that integrates with our current systems where we're able to predict far in advance and budget for this HVAC is going to need replacing in 10 years, this roof, et cetera. So that was done and is still being digested. And the strategy facility master planning work begins in early spring of 2020. Formation, evaluation assessment, and the planning work will begin both with current state and as future state possibilities come into play, keeping them in mind. So back to our larger model here. As you can see, there's a lot of work going on. There are a lot of groups working in isolation, but connected together through the strategy committee. It's been a very, just as to have been a part, because I'm a part of all of these groups, to see the passion, the dedication, the incredible amount of creativity and competence that this group has displayed, by the way, who are largely volunteers, has just been remarkable. To come as far as we have in as short a period of time as we have, as Maggie suggested, we started out with a plan for each group, an associated timeline, knew that interdependencies were going to emerge, knew that potential shifts in focus could happen, and we've had some of that. a slight recalibration. And oh, we need to start thinking about organic expansion in the near term, which may play nicely into the long-term expansion, but we can't wait 18 months to start thinking about what a reimagined physical plant, for example, might be to have some of these new programs. And so that's been a really healthy evolution, a really healthy dialogue. I'm going to pause and grab my pad to make sure I didn't miss any key talking points that I wanted to. No, I said them all. But really, my intention this evening, and I hope that it's come through, is of course to share the details of the work that's happened thus far, and we're going to pause and have a discussion in Q&A, and I can't wait for that. To communicate that there's big work happening, but I also wanted to give the big work context with the why, the what, and the how. And the how that we've created for ourselves as a part of the strategic plan, the strategic vision statement, elevates the what, which we hope will elevate the why. And that's why we're doing this. And to me, that's my North Star. When I'm sitting in the room going, this is hard. This would be easier if we didn't do it, like I said before. But it's important work. It's big work. And everybody has been all in. So thank you. At this point, not just for me, there are many working group members and board members in the room. I want to open this up to questions. I'll take questions from the room. If you're on the live stream and you want to offer a question, please type them in. I will pause after a couple in the room and try to go to the live stream. I'm going to need everyone's help in the room because I'm not going to remember to do this. But for the sake of the people on the live stream, please remind me to repeat the question as it comes in the room before I answer it. I'll do it on the first one and then never think about it again. But that's the end of our, no, it's not. I thought during the Q&A, we would have the following slide up. Some of you have seen this before, some of you may have not. As part of our initial data gathering process, when we were at the very beginning of the strategic plan, there was a survey to parents, which many of you completed. Thank you for that. And parents could volunteer for a follow-up interview on the phone with the firm that was that had some follow-up questions and could get some narrative responses to different questions. And we had quite a few participants in that. And the questions spanned a range of different categories. But one of the exercises that the firm did for us was they took words or phrases or descriptors that were recurrent, that came up, themes that came up over and over and over again. And they created this conceptual map for us that the larger the words are, the more they came up. But this was a really, really, how shall I say, affirming representation, I think, of our community, from our community. And so that feels good to leave up there. So I'm going to leave that up there during the Q&A. At this point, I will open it up to any and all questions about anything that we have presented or left out this evening that you might have questions about. Wow, we did a good job. Quit.
The number of hours of exposure per day of sort of Montessori, and what I'm not going where I'm going with that is not to say that that AMS needs to just be like 18 hours a day, but rather, I know that there's classes that connect with family and siblings rivalry and that sort of thing. And I wonder, in this plan, where there is there more sort of a comprehensive development of what are the other ways to expand the support for families and parents beyond the scope of just the hours in the day that they're at the school? How can we broaden that piece of it? What's been some of that thinking?
I'm going to attempt to summarize your question. Tell me if I fall short. The question was, beyond the hours that the children just spend in school, acknowledging the partnership pieces and help that we provide parents through the Connected Family Workshop and other forums for adults to connect, if I'm understanding you correctly. are we looking at expanding those, and what might that look like? Is that a fair assessment of your question?
I would just sort of end that a little bit and say, are there other approaches that maybe you've seen out there, or other ideas? So it might be more directed at children, or it might be something besides just teaching parents, but a way to help the concept of Montessori get to the children beyond hours that they're exposed to just the school itself.
Okay, so in order to enable the concepts of Montessori, and in so many words, to expand beyond just school, whether it's working with children or adults, the way that we would approach that would be working with the adults and trying to create a mutual orientation and continuity between the home environment and the school environment. Now, the short answer to your question is yes. There is really, really big work going on right now looking at the school-parent partnership holistically, from contact point one through the admissions process, through onboarding, through maintaining that thread of dialogue, which is what we want to underscore our partnership to be, all the way through the school, through more workshop, all kinds of things are happening there. So the short answer to your question is yes. That was just a little bit too much detail to go into tonight. I even had a slide with some examples of what that's going to look like real soon. That we can cover that in a different forum. But I do want to say this, and this is an important, I think, acknowledgement for all parents and all listening and otherwise. The primary, how do I want to say this so I clearly articulate what I'm trying to say? The majority of your child's overall orientation, development, developing themselves through the environment, developing themselves as a function of the family in the world, are not going to come in our classrooms. They're going to come in the home environment. And in my mind, we as a school haven't done enough, at least externally, to acknowledge that, okay? And what I consider our primary responsibility, that's all the more reason to strengthen that partnership. Provide a wide variety of different types of forums and ways that parents can engage, whether it be individually, whether it be collectively in a group and workshops, whether it be workshops at different, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different ways that we can do that. That is that's one of the reasons that I think that we started taking a look at how we were partnering with families. And not only the forums that we provided, whether it be a parent gathering here, article submission through the weekly there, admissions process, whatever. We wanted to take a look at the substance, the content, how we were sharing our orientation, how the dialogue was unfolding, and we wanted to make it a more sort of mutualistic exchange where we are connected, clearly oriented in the same direction, working towards a common goal. And that takes all kinds of different forms, whether it be a support call to somebody, whether it's your guide or the Swetha, the director of parent outreach and parent engagement. Hey, I'm having whatever it might be. We also want to do a better job, and this is also something that's getting intentionality, of creating safe spaces and mutual orientation for parents to connect with one another. Because one of the ways that we can really support the children's development, the school is happy to serve as that sort of middle ground, and the, I don't know, moderator sounds terrible, cog in the center of that wheel. When we're all working in community, let's say there's a situation that comes up between two or more children in an early elementary environment, which will happen because it's socially messy from time to time. To have the feeling of connectivity and trust and safety to be able to connect with one another, bringing the school in when necessary, the school facilitating when necessary. Hey, this is what happened today. This is what I understood. How about, whatever that looks like. All of those things, we're looking at all of that sort of globally. What can we offer? How can we offer it? How can we expand? How can we do this better? But not just in terms of the messaging or the forum or any of that. We're trying to infuse this orientation in thread and embody it in every interaction that we have, how we live, how we work in administration, how the classroom assistants are working, how the guides are, all of it. this is something that we really started taking an earnest look at probably about a year ago. And I think that you're going to start to feel some of that shift, if you haven't already, real soon, starting with some of the events that are coming later this semester with our digital, development in the digital media age. The social and emotional guidelines meetings are going to take a different form this year. So the answer is yes. Stay tuned for that. We're looking at it completely globally, and it's been really exciting work so far. So I'm really glad that you asked that as the first question, because I didn't get to share it here. Dawn. Yes, thank you. That's right, we did that the first year. Yes. Yeah. Dawn added that 2 other avenues that we have for that were the Parents Association, which is now 5 years old, and the Austin Families in Nature, which is now actually what do we call it? Are we a subgroup, a charter? We're officially part of the larger Austin Families in Nature group, the Austin Montessori School group. So there's another forum for you. Yeah, there's a camping trip this weekend. A question from the live stream. Are there any, Sean? Okay, question from the room. Manish.
So regarding the 0 to 3 program,
Mhm.
You mentioned that the program working group took a look at both the NIDO and the part of that. And obviously you're quite, but ultimately it would kind of look like you were looking for a model.
Not finalized, but yes.
Certainly see the advantages that certainly brings the parents more involved. There's greater opportunities to kind of share this approach with that. However, it presupposes that there's a parent available.
It does.
To be able to do that, and do you worry that we may lose some families whose reality may be that they just need a space? We'll lose those children to traditional daycare or something else.
Mhm.
Be better having that option to be able to bring those families in.
So the question was going back to the 0 to 3 programming, where we displayed that AMI has essentially 2 different models: the NIDO and the parent-infant, and then the sort of in progress slide suggested that we're going more in the parent-infant direction. Are we worried that we would be losing people by not having a NIDO? Because as Manish very aptly put it, the parent-infant presupposes that there's a parent available to come to that. And so let me say a couple of things to that. No, I don't want to. What you saw is where the current work and current focus is. So I don't want to stand here and say we're not going to have a NIDO, because we don't know that yet. What I do know is where we have put our near-term focus, and we already have a parent-infant program. The parent-infant program, as we have conceptualized it, sort of, envisioned it, we feel like we would be able to reach in the near term. Now, what can we do now? And it's going to be iterative. It's going to evolve. It doesn't necessarily have to take place strictly during the time when people are working. And there's different ways that we can reach different people. And so, yes and no, potentially. Another near-term consideration for the NIDO specifically, a NIDO community can only have 8 children in it at one time, but is very extensive in terms of resource cost for staffing, infrastructure. And so this is one lens. Don't misunderstand this to be a reductionist view of this. It takes a while to be able to have a school that can sustain one or multiple NIDO environments based on the amount of expenses and resources that the school has to put into it based on what they can get back, right? It's not something that breaks even for the school, right? And so in thinking about trying to marry sort of the way we're thinking about it in terms of community outreach, we envision some of our parent-infant offerings not just being, you've enrolled in our parent-infant community. How can we reach the most families building off what we already have and know right now? And so that's more a function of where our near-term focus has gone. we have not definitively said it's going to be parent-infant over NIDO or NIDO over parent-infant. We're going to start here, and this whole thing is going to evolve over time. And the design thinking there is not sort of, as we suggested, designing the program, designing the whole thing like the high school is going to do. It's about how do we want this to, coalesce or manifest at Austin Montessori School in the near term, And so what you just saw is really, as it's unfolded, though we haven't sat in the room and just said this, what can we accomplish that could make real impact in the next 12 to 18 months? And that's kind of where the focus of that conversation has gone. So, it's not saying no to that. It's just identifying this is where we think we can start with impact. Other questions?
I just want to make maybe one more comment.
Sure. Oh, yeah. It's actually right here. Just check it out.
So another thing that we're very aware, when you looked at that expanded chart with all the boxes and all the potential, if we start addressing attrition and sort of all the potential new communities that we would need to grow the school just to take care of the families that we have. We really want to be very mindful of the administrative overhead and the, just kind of organizationally, just being very methodical in our thinking about how much do we want to expand at what period of time. So that's another theme that to just keep in mind is that's already there were a lot of new gray boxes all over there. So, we don't think we want to transform the school overnight and, increase the size dramatically in too quickly a period of time.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually want to add to that just a little bit. One of the things that we are, so just based on that from a facilities perspective, a lesson that we have learned with this most recent adventure with the city of Austin, it's a big deal to remodel a building, to get a permit, to build a new building. That stuff takes time. I mean, months and months and months. And so we haven't even mapped any of that to a timeline yet. Our original intention was to open the new younger children's community back in January. Well, it was just last month, but have all this stuff done. And so, it actually was. It was back in August. I've been in January for so long because it was back in August. Yeah, we're just going to build this, right? So there's that piece. But you touched on this too, Claire, and I should have said this earlier. I actually lied. That was one of my talking points I didn't talk about. One of the things that we're being really mindful and really intentional about is, well, number one, we don't want to expand for the sake of expanding. That goes without saying. We don't want to expand beyond what we have the capacity to support. And we have a real good sense of, and you kind of saw it. We haven't said this yet, but there's only so big that we could be and be able to be as effective as we are in doing what we do. You can't replicate what we're doing ad nauseum. I mean, you could, but it would take a whole new paradigm and a lot more human resources and a lot more training and orientation and all the rest of it. And we want to preserve that which is Austin Montessori School. We want to be able to do what we do and do well and do what we do now even better. And we don't want to dilute our resources to a point that we're not able to replicate or do that. So it's about, administrative capacity. It's about facilities capacity and all the adventures that come along with that. So a lot of things that go into all that. And one of the things that Maggie touched on too, I think you even said this specifically down to hours. Even as we've gone through this process so far, the board, the working group members, the volunteers, we have, postponed things, rescheduled meetings. No, we can do this then because everyone is holding in front of them. We do not want to sacrifice current state, what our focus and intention and what we're doing here now in the day-to-day running of Austin Montessori School for the planning. In so much as they can coexist, and they do, that's great. But we're still very, very mindful of allocation of our resources, even right now, just with the planning. So, other questions? Hi.
So I appreciate, I really appreciate the sort of anchoring on the why. I think it's really helpful. Of all the high competencies that I saw articulated in the strategic plan, the one that I think seems like it has the potential to be most, I'm going to use the word disruptive, but I mean it could be in a positive way.
Sure.
To me, feels like high school. Most of the other hypotheses, I could see how you could iterate there. I'm wondering, good, bad, and indifferent, when you think about, or when the strategic planning committee thinks about high school, is there an implicit bias towards like owning, operating a high school versus enabling teachers, students, and administrators to sort of bring forth Montessori into high schools that are not owned and operated? Is there an implicit bias, and if so, why?
No. Oh, geez. Okay. Hey, Maddie, I'm going to ask you to ask that again.
Okay. Montessori High School is a big idea, really exciting, but also potentially disruptive. When the Strategic Planning Committee is thinking about it, are they specifically thinking about AMS owning and operating a high school versus enabling 15-year-olds and not to mention AMS faculty and administration to sort of bring forth, world peace through Montessori into partner schools or partner programs as opposed to like owning and operating?
Thank you for sparing me trying to re-articulate that. Strategic working group, I'm going to go out on a limb and answer myself. No. Thank you. Check me. Is there an implicit bias? Yes and no. Here's what I mean by that. Are we opposed to exploring creating partnerships with others, or that sort of second category of things that you painted? No. And that work will come, and it's part of the design consideration. However, what's also true, though, is if we did that, which we are open to doing, we would want to do so in a very intentional way, and in such a way that we as a school were internally mutually oriented to what we were looking for and what were need to haves, nice to have, non-negotiables, all the rest of it. Okay. And in order for us to be able to even do that, explore whether we're on the one track to sort of develop and create our own or all points in between, is to fully understand those things that I sort of enumerated in the design component slides here. And that is the developmental characteristics of the 15 to 18-year-old, what we consider to be essential core elements, what those core elements would be. If we were to, let's say, out on a limb again, if we were to get to the end of this phase of the work, okay, and decide that we were going to, nope, we're going to do it ourselves, there would be a phase 2 of development where we would likely hire folks to come in and really flesh out the design and so that it's ready to roll out in the next year or two, right? As opposed to door number 2, taking these pieces and sharing as shared orientation and exploration of shared values and partnership. And I think that could exist. It's not as though others don't share similar values of their tenants in other independent high schools, even around the Austin area. So no, we have not closed that door. We just haven't gotten that far in the work. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that okay? Okay. It's not just me. I have to remember that. Other questions? Manish. Oh, thanks, Dave.
Would you care to speculate on what a redesigned adolescent program may hypothetically look like?
No, I would not speculate on that at this juncture.
Asking for a friend.
Yes, I can't. I will not speculate on that because that will be a team approach. But what it will not do is sacrifice any of the quality of what we consider the crucial elements of this prepared environment and the experience it provides for the young adolescents that we serve right now. Anything that would serve as any kind of dilution and not as at least what we have, if not augmentation, would be a non-starter. I can say that. Beyond that, it would not be. It would be imprudent for me to do that because that would be one man sharing one man's opinion, and we have an entire team of highly experienced and competent folks to be working on that. So that would be unproductive at this point.
We won't let him.
Maddie.
I didn't see extracurricular.
Hang on, real quick. So he doesn't have to repeat the question.
Thank you. I didn't see extracurricular activities for the existing students mentioned in the strategic program. Is that because it's considered part of just sort of like ongoing optimization of business as usual, or is it because it didn't rise to the top?
Both. You know, it is ongoing. That was articulated in the strategic priorities. That was one of the categories under programs. The initial work has been of the working groups has been the design groups around the 2 underserved age groups, because it's going on operationally anyway. There'll be a point when those 2 things intersect strategically. Right now, we're really, and this is also going to dovetail with when it will become more strategic. It will dovetail into some of the facility planning in future state, because in a lot of ways we're limited in what we can offer based on lack of physical space and capacity, because all our buildings are classrooms, right? And so it's a function of both of those 2 things. It did not fall off the map. It just, as you suggested, didn't quite boil up to share what the active work has been tonight. But that work is going on operationally, just not strategically at this point. Yeah, good question. Others? Any online? Dave.
When can we buy that t-shirt?
Blythe. When can I buy? It's currently a mug, right?
It's a mug.
Well, did y'all explore putting that on a t-shirt? Did we talk about that?
I didn't.
Huh.
I could though. I could. I mean.
Oh, did you? Wait, Dave has a mic, right? He asked if this was. Oh, Blythe. I threw that to Blythe, the PA president. We have put this on a mug, and I think maybe we're going to explore now putting them on a t-shirt.
Yeah,
It's possible.
There's a condensed version that is on. The only words that you won't see are the small ones that didn't fit, but the larger ones are definitely on there. You can find it on Kelly's desk and Lois's desk for $12.
Just one small piece of design criteria. I think you lose it on a pocket square. Make it a little larger. That was a joke. Other questions? Maybe so. Other questions? Or comments, response? All right. Thank you all. How many people were on the live stream, Sean?
We got over 30.
All right, very nice. To all of you that joined us from home on the live stream this evening, thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us. For those of you that came in the cold and rain and maybe had to get babysitters, thank you all. We will again post the video, the slide deck. If you have any additional questions that come up for you later or things that you'd like to discuss further, please reach out to me. I'm happy to connect with you at any time. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.